Well, hey there, guys. Greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the channel for this special open spoiler discussion about the brand new Avatar film, Avatar Fire and Ash. I am your host, John Campea. Good to have you guys here. Now, as the title suggests, this is going to be an open spoiler. We're going to be talking about Avatar Fire and Ash in all its open spoilery detail. So if you haven't seen the movie or you don't want to be spoiled for it, why the hell are you here? Add this to your watch later list and come on back and watch it a little later. But for the rest of you guys who are here, good to have you guys here. Hello to everybody in the live chat. Stavros, Real, Amin, Tyler, Nerock. We've already got a couple hundred people in here. Good to have you guys here as we get going. Now, here's how the open spoiler discussion is going to go. I'm going to start by talking just for a few minutes about Avatar Fire and Ash. And then we're going to spend the entire rest of our time, the rest of the hour and a half that we're going to be doing this, taking your observations. Now, if you have an observation, a thought, an opinion, or a question about Avatar Fire and Ash, go ahead and fire it on into our super chats in the live chat. And you got to be watching live in order to do that. Now, I do want to give this thing here. It should go without saying, since this is an Avatar open fire discussion, Avatar Fire and Ash open spoiler discussion. Please keep your questions, comments, observations to all things Avatar Fire and Ash. If you write in a question asking about Spider-Man, I'm just going to skip over your question. Just to let you guys know, this is an Avatar open spoiler discussion. So there you have it. Okay. So let's get things started. I'm going to break it down like this. I'm going to give my quick general feelings about Avatar Fire and Ash, which you probably already know because of my reviews, but I'll do it anyway. Then I like to start with the negative things, the things I didn't like, so I like to get that out of the way. And then I'll move on to the things that I quite enjoyed, and then we'll go over and take your guys' questions. So overall, and in general, you probably heard me say this already, I really like the film. I had a good time watching the movie. I came out of it, smile on my face. Movies to me are experiential events, and that movie delivered spectacle. It delivered wonder. It was just a fun time. It was a good, it's my third favorite of the three Avatar films. So if you wanted to say that more pessimistically, you could say it's my least favorite of the Avatar films, but I like them all. So I'm going to call it my third favorite because I do have some issues with it. But again, overall, the movie's a win for me. I had a good time watching it, and, I'm not really planning on going to see it again, but I just might. I just might go to see it again. So overall, really enjoyed the film. So with that said, let me get into some of the specifics that, kept it from being higher on my list. These are things I didn't like about it. Two things I'll start off with that you've heard me say before. One, there were unnecessary scenes in this movie. This movie did not need to be 3 hours long. The story of this movie did not need to be 3 hours long. And there were a number of scenes and sequences that happened in the movie that either another scene or sequence already established that point and you didn't need to do it again, or they just threw it in because they kind of felt like we need another action beat here. I'll give you an example of it. So when the one son, I can't remember Jake's son's names, okay? I'll just call him Tweedledum. So when his son, I guess he's only got one son now because the other one died. So when Jake's son goes off to look for his whale big buddy, he ends up getting attacked by all those squid-like creatures, right? That scene was completely unnecessary. Now, one might say, but John, you see, that scene sets up for later in the film when Awa sends all the squid creatures out. You think that needed a setup? Do you really think that scene at the end when all these creatures come up from the deep because Awa was sending them, you really think we go, wait a minute, what are those creatures? Oh, do other things live in the ocean? Like, you're telling me you just would have been confounded with confusion if earlier in the film they didn't have that completely unnecessary action sequence of all the little squiddies attacking Jake's son? I thought, and again, that's just one example. Like, that was like 5 minutes of the movie that easily could have been saved. that I kind of felt like they just put it in there for the sake of having it there. You know what I mean? And the film was kind of peppered here and there with a number of unnecessary sequences that didn't need to be there in order to further the story, either because there was no purpose to them or they're just repeating something that was already in another scene. So don't get me wrong. I'm not like saying this movie should have been 45 minutes shorter, but I think easily, without even second thought, boom, 20 minutes could have been cut out of this movie very easily, made it feel much more tight. So that was one thing. I thought the movie didn't need to be that long. Didn't have to be that long. All right. Second thing you've heard me say already about it that I did not like. The high frame rate in this movie drove me nuts. Drove me nuts. And what made it worse is that it seemed like they cut in and out of the high frame rate. And every time they would, I found it, I can't speak for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. I found it very jarring. Every time they cut to high frame rate and back, I found it very jarring. And here's the thing. One of the beautiful things about the Avatar films is that the visual effects of live action characters with CGI characters was always almost flawless, like beautifully done. But I found when they were in high frame rate mode, it made it look more obvious that one being on screen was a live action actor and the other was CGI. Like they suddenly didn't look like they belonged in the same shot. You know what I mean? It really highlighted that this part is CGI and this part isn't. And it kind of took me out of the movie a few times that they did that. So I really didn't enjoy, and I'm a high frame rate defender. Like I'm not one of these, oh, high frame rate's awful. No, high frame rate can be great, but I found its use in this movie was jarring and it pulled me out of it a little bit. So there's that. All right. Those are the things that you already knew about that I didn't like. Here's a couple of others. That whole scene, like Isaac, where Jake was getting ready to sacrifice Spider to save Pandora. To me, it came out of nowhere. Now, earlier in the film, Neytiri suggests it. Like, hey, listen, it reminds me a lot of Infinity War, when all the Avengers are like, well, wait a minute. If what Thanos needs is to get the Mind Stone from Vision to have all the power to do this stuff, maybe we should just wipe out Vision. We don't trade lives. Well, that same kind of philosophy gets brought up here where like Neytiri suggests, listen, if it's really that dangerous that they get their hands on this Spider Kid, who she doesn't like anyway because she's racist against humans for understandable reasons. They set that up, yes. But Jake was very firm. Like, no, that ain't happening. We're not doing this. We will find another way. We're not just sacrificing this kid. And it seemed like there was no progression. There was no steps from Jake taking that position with Neytiri that, no, we're not killing this kid. That's completely out of the question, to, you know what, baby, you're right. I need to shank this kid. Give me the knife. I'll go bleed him out. Like there was no progression. It was like one scene with Neytiri brings it up and he says, no, bad girl. We're not killing this kid. And then the next thing you know, he's like, yeah, I got to kill this kid. It's not even like there was any big conversation that happens. Like if there had been a scene in between those two where maybe the human scientist is talking to Jake and says, you know, you fought so hard to protect this world, but guess what, Corporal? Now that we have this kid, we're going to figure out how to make it so all of us humans can do this. Where, like, if there had been like some conversation that really kind of caused Jake to suddenly evolve his position and start to wonder, maybe killing Spider is the right thing to do, it wouldn't have felt as out of place. But as the way it laid out, that whole scene was taking place where he's got Spider and he's getting ready to stab him. I'm like, none of this feels believable because there's no way I think Jake just went from being one way with Neytiri to all of a sudden feeling I need to shank this kid. And I just thought that part was handled badly. I think that part was handled badly. So that's one of the things I really didn't like. Another thing that I don't like about this movie, and remember, I'm just trying to get if you're joining me late, I'm just trying to get all the negatives out of the way first so I can go on and focus on the positives. But another thing I didn't like about Fire and Ash is in the end, it just becomes a supernatural exercise. It kind of felt like by Iowa coming in and saving the day, it almost felt to me like nothing that Jake or the Na'vi or the heroic humans, Spider, whatever, it almost carried this feeling at the end of, oh, these guys didn't actually need to do anything. All it took was for Sigourney Weaver's Sigourney Weaver daughter to just go deep into meditation and say, hey, Ewa, can you save us? And then Ewa, the planet saved them. The planet fought on their side. That's it. You know what it reminds me of a little bit? It reminds me a little bit of Return to the King, which is one of the greatest movies ever made. But it kind of felt like when Aragorn shows back up on the boat with all the ghost warriors, and all the ghost warriors just flood out of the ship and start going through and slaughtering all the orcs. Kind of made me feel like, did anybody else need to show up to the fight? Like if Aragorn was just going to show up with all the ghosties and they're just going through and slaughtering everybody, did anybody else need to show up? I've often wondered about that. But anyway, yeah, so there's having the planet itself actually save everybody at the end. It just for a little bit, it made me question, well, then what's everything else for? Why does it matter what Jake does? Why does it matter if this character does this or if at the end of the day, all it took was for Ewa to go, okay, I'll help you. And send all the creatures to go and kill everybody. Again, it didn't derail the movie for me. It's just one of those little things that I didn't like that decision at the end. I would have liked, and I don't mean to be one of those people because it drives me crazy when people do this. I don't mean one of these people who's like, they should have done it the way I would have done it. And otherwise I won't like it. And I know that's what I sound like here, but indulge me for a minute. I feel like as we're getting to the end of the film and we're in the third act and the big conflict now between good and evil is happening, it really would have felt more satisfying to me as somebody who's been following along with the hero's journey. If somehow the Na'vi and the heroic humans, whatever, they pulled out that one last trump card they had, that one last ace up their sleeve, and they were able to turn the tide and win the war rather than, don't worry about it. Na'vi God is gonna have your back. And so, cause that took away from it a little bit for me. So yeah, there was that. That's another thing I really didn't quite like about it. But other than that, I feel like there was not many. I have a few other little nitpicks, but I don't feel like there's a lot more that I didn't enjoy about the film. So let me go on and talk about a couple things that I really liked. Visually, bam, other than the high frame rate stuff that I talked about a little bit earlier, visually, my God, this movie is gorgeous. I saw it at AMC in an XL theater. That's their new large format, kind of like an IMAX. It's their new large format. I saw this thing in XL and it was breathtakingly beautiful. Breathtakingly beautiful. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. I know the high frame rate made too much of a distinction between the live action characters and CGI, but my God, the CGI was great. The character work in this thing was unbelievable. It all looked so good. The action was fantastic. Even that first big action scene where they're flying along with the sky merchants, and then that's when Varang and her tribe come and attack for the first time. That aerial battle was unbelievable. It looked fantastic. I was on the edge of my seat. The action was great. Really enjoyed that. And while we're talking about, what's her name? Varang? Yeah. Varang Varong is maybe the best character they've ever had in Avatar. I mean, this character is awesome because she's a great villain in the sense that you understand her motivation. Often, you know what? This is how good the character is. I found myself wondering a couple of times, what was she like before the disaster? Because I feel like she is somebody that just got completely twisted by the ruination of her people. Like, it's a great villainous origin story, right? Like, I wonder, what was she like to the point that it devastated her and twisted her so much when her people were almost all wiped out and their forest was destroyed and they called out to Awa and Awa did not come. And it turned her into what she is now. And now she's this very hedonistic, gloriously hedonistic, like badass. And I loved the character. Absolutely loved the character. And speaking of characters that I love, my goodness, Quaritch, kind of like, I've always liked Quaritch's character, performed by and beautifully voiced by Stephen Lang. Stephen Lang once told me, call me Slang. So I've called him Slang ever since. If Stephen Lang tells you to call him Slang, I call him Slang. So he told me to call him Slang, so we'll call him this. So done by Slang, Quaritch has always been a good character. Like a really solid character in these movies as your antagonist. But this movie decides to give him some evolution as well. Like, he's got an actual character arc now. He's got inner conflict now. Granted, they introduced some inner conflict with him in the last movie, understanding that he has a son and all that kind of stuff, but they really further, and there's this one point in the movie where Jake says this great line to him, and I'm sure I'm not getting it word for word right, but basically Jake says to him, like, you have new eyes now, use them. Like, I get it. You saw the world one way, but you have new eyes now. Use them. And I thought that line was absolutely fantastic. I thought that line was great. And by the way, one of the best moments of the movie. Oh, somebody else just kind of brought this up too. Here we go. One of the best moments of the movie to me is when Quaritch goes walking into the Ash Tribe's village, right? And they got him. And she, maybe we'll just kill you, whatever. He goes, oh, I don't think so. And he looks at one guy and goes, take this one out. And boom, bah, he drops because he's got his dude off on the mountain who's like a killer sniper. Yeah, this one here, take this one out. Boom. Like, just saying, hey, I've got the big dick, okay? Varong's got a big dick. I got a big dick. And I can kill any one of you guys right now. I can just give the word and any one of you are going to be dead right now. It was awesome. It was just that cool hand Luke kind of power play. I just thought that was killer. But then again, I also love Varong's response to it. And she's actually turned on by it. Like, again, that's why I use the word hedonistic. There was something so visceral about that. And even that moment when he says to her, no, you're looking for an equal. Because she has no equal. He's like, you're looking for an equal, and I'm it. Like, I'm the baddest of the bad. I'm it. And I just thought that whole thing was awesome. So I thought that was all great too. Again, the big climactic battle at the end, I thought was maybe overdone a little bit and stretched out a little bit too long, maybe, but still thrilling, exciting, much like the way the big battle sequence at the end of Avatar, The Way of Water was. But this one was kind of like stretched out maybe a little bit too much. But still, I thought it was great and thrilling, other than the fact that at the end, Awa. By the way, let me add that one other thing to the thing I didn't like. I didn't like at the end how she was now able to, attach into the seaweed. And now she can see everybody who's dead. And listen, I don't mind the idea of the mythology of the Na'vi that, like, when somebody dies, they become one with Awa, they become one with the planet. I'm all good with that. Like, I like that. That's great. But I don't like the idea that now all of a sudden the living can just naturally commune with them as if all the dead people are just hanging out at a 7-Eleven. Like, oh yeah, I can just go and talk to all these dead guys. It's no problem. They're all here. Because what that does is that it takes away loss. It takes away consequences. Like, yes, when the Na'vi die, maybe they become one with Awa and they become one with the earth, but you are separated from them. You don't get to see them anymore, but you know they're one with Awa. That's fine. By even removing that veil at the end, that, oh, all I got to do is hook up my dreads to this plankton here, and I'll just be able to go and hang out with them in the parking lot of Awa 7-Eleven. And they're all just hanging out, and we can just all go and talk there like everything's cool. And that, to me, took away some of the, like, so who cares if somebody dies? They're just going to the 7-Eleven parking lot. Everything's fine, right? So I like there still at least being that veil in there. So, but anyway, that was another thing. But again, overall, and again, I like, oh, by the way, I'm seeing a lot of hate. I'm seeing a lot of hate for Spider. And I don't know what your guys' problem is. I liked Spider. I thought Spider was great. And from a narrative point of view, like Pandora physically changing him, like adds a new layer to the mythology. And yeah, man, I like the character. I thought the character was great. I love the dynamic that he has with Quaritch being his father. And oh man, you know, my favorite line in the movie, other than drop this one here. My favorite line in the movie is when, so Jake and Quaritch are fighting and then Spider gets knocked down and he's fallen off the cliff, right? And so Quaritch dives off the cliff to grab Spider and save Spider, and Jake grabs his other arm. And Jake says, lift him up to me. And Quaritch is like trying to lift him up. It's like, come on. And Quaritch goes, gee, maybe you shouldn't have shot me in the arm. I laughed my ass off. Yeah, it's maybe you shouldn't have shot me in the arm. As he couldn't lift him up. That line, chef's kiss. It was perfect. Oh, and then even once they climb off the ledge and they're sitting there all for a second, then Quaritch is like, well, this is awkward. I loved it. I thought that line was great, man. I ate it up. I really did. So yeah, I have some issues with it. It's not perfect. It's my least favorite of the Avatar films, but I still thought there was a world of good stuff there that made me walk out of that theater. All the drawbacks taken in consideration, I still thought there was a world of stuff there to really enjoy. And I walked out happy, and you know, I personally marked this one up as another win. I thought it was a really good fun movie. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. The good, the bad, you know, my general impressions, some of my favorite moments, all that kind of stuff. But now let's do the important thing here, guys. Let's get over and take your questions. Let's get your thoughts on all this. Now, I'm going to let you know that I do have the super chats open right now, but I am going to close them in like 2 or 3 minutes because there's already plenty of super chats in there. It's going to take us a little while to get through. And I don't want to go more than like an hour and a half tonight. So ideally an hour, but I probably have to go more than that. So if you do have a thought, observation, theory about Avatar Fire and Ash, a super memorable moment that you want to share, go ahead and do that within the next 2 to 3 minutes, because then I will turn off the super chats and we'll just address all the questions that have been sent in since that time. All right. With that down, guys, let's get over to the questions here, shall we? And we're going to start off with Ethan Holgate, who writes 1 of 2. I wonder if Cameron based that acid trip scene between Quaritch and Varong off his own experience on acid in real life, as there's an interview online of him talking about his experience taking it for a documentary that never got finished. And it's pretty cool and funny what he talks about. Maybe. Listen, all those filmmakers were on acid at one point or another. I feel like every filmmaker of even around Cameron's generation, they were all on heavy acid at some point, it seems like. So I don't think you're wrong. I think probably part of that very well could have been, you know, let's say inspired by some of his true life experience. All right. Thanks for that, Ethan. All right. Next up, Behidra writes, I love the Fire Na'vi and the Colonel. The Sullys are fine. Good action and visuals. Can't stand Spider. His line delivery is painful. 6 out of 10 for me. Again, I liked him. I liked Spider. I liked his spunkiness. I liked his attitude. They definitely gave him character. They didn't make him a flatline character. they gave him personality, and I get it. Not for everybody, but I liked him. I like Spider. Count me as pro Spider. All right. Thanks for your thoughts, man. All right. Next up, Ethan Holgate writes in again, 1 of 3. I think Kiri has to be the most fascinating character. Can I just say her seeing Awa? That is definitely James Cameron's Star Child cinematic moment of right out of 2001. Actually, that's a really good comparison, Ethan. But I still want more answers with her, even though we got some. I do wonder just how powerful how powerful is she really, and will she become more powerful as the story goes on? Also, leave my mother alone, bitch. Amazing corny line aliens reference. Cause honestly, what else do you say to that in the moment? And of course, a lot of people miss that because it's Sigourney Weaver saying the line, right? It's an interesting question because I caught myself wondering this, Ethan. I caught myself wondering, was that Kiri that did it, or was it Awa working through Kiri, or did Awa bestow power on Kiri in and of herself? And that's a question I think they need to answer later on. I don't know how much of it is just her and her latent power because of the nature of what her whole being is, or was it Awa working through her? I don't know. Does she become the living embodiment of Awa? Because remember, she's born in Immaculate Conception, right? There's no father. Like, Awa made Sigourney Weaver's avatar pregnant, and therefore we have her. So how much of that power is passed through? It's a very good question. It's something I think they'll probably address as we get further on into the story. All right, I'm just going to turn off super chats now because we've had a few more come in, and I don't have time to answer many more than the ones that have already come in. So we'll just turn those off quickly. All right, let's keep things going now. Jai CSC writes, I'm mixed on Fire and Ash. In a thumbs up, thumbs down world, I'll go with thumbs up, but only just. I think it's the weakest of the series so far. And you know what? Here's the thing to me. I quite enjoyed it, but I agree it's my least favorite of the 3. And I could see how some of the things that bothered me about the film would bother somebody else even more than they bothered me. And so it's not one of those films that I'll, like, if you don't like it, it's not one of those films where I'll go, how can you possibly not love this movie? No. I get it. Like, for me, I quite enjoyed it, but I also agree with you, least good of the 3. And I could see why the negatives probably weighed heavier on you than they did with me. All right. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Jai. All right. Callum writes, I was blown away. I love the Jake and Quaritch team-ups. Me too. Varung was awesome and hot. I'm in the minority, but I prefer this to Q's. I prefer this to 2. Quaritch's arc is fascinating. Just like I said, I would totally get it if you like this movie less than I did, but I would totally also get it if you liked it more than me. I still think 2 is the best one of the series. I think The Way of Water is the best one in the series. That's just me. But I did think this was still a worthy follow-up to it. I thought it was a good, true sequel to the second one, and it worked on that level. Again, I didn't like it as much as you did, but I'm in a thumbs up world. I enjoyed it. Big smile on my face. And I can just hope they do a third one. All right, thanks for that, Caleb. Jai CSC writes, 1 of 2. Its pacing is my main critique. So many subplots are cut into really short scenes. Completely agree. And it jumps around a lot. Over an hour, it jumps around a lot. Over an hour, it feels fragmented. I think if we followed a character for 10, 12-minute sections, like when Quaritch met with the Ash, rather than up to 4-minute scenes before cutting somewhere else, it might have had better flow and impact. You know what? I think you're 100% right. It's not one of the things that I mentioned, and I'm glad you brought it up. The overall story does feel very cohesive, but the telling of the story, you're right, I think felt fragmented. It was jumping a lot to a lot of different sub scenes that were happening, not enough time to really soak in the atmosphere of what was going on with one particular scene and one particular set of characters. I honestly thought a lot of other stuff could have been cut out of the movie to make more time for Giovanni Ribisi's character to even get a little bit more into his motivation, right? For, being as diabolical as he was. But I will in general, like I still like the movie more than you did overall, but I think you were right. I think that's a valid criticism that the editing could have been done much better. Talking about story editing, I think you're absolutely right on that, and I'm going to agree with you on that one, Jai. All right, next up. Christopher Brickner writes, well, I don't think Avatar Fire and Ash had any unnecessary scenes. Oh, I did. But I think each scene could have been cut down by 1 to 3 minutes. Well, you know, it's funny because you're saying some scenes could have been cut down, whereas Jai is saying some of the scenes were just so quick that they were almost pointless. I do think there were entire sections that just could have been removed. I really do. There were just entire 4 or 5 minute blocks that I don't think had to be there in order for the story to properly and emotionally build and be told. And, you know, but the squids attacking Jake's son looks so cool. Yes, but there's so much in the movie that looks so cool. I really didn't think that was necessary. So I'm going to stand by. I still think more sections just should have been taken out entirely rather than shortening down the sections that they had. Other than the final battle, I think the final battle could have been shortened up a little bit, but everything else I thought was fine as far as their length. I just didn't think some of the scenes were necessary. All right. Rylan writes, 1 of 2. Really enjoyed the movie, although I do think that some cons were repeating plots 2 movies in a row with the Tulkun saving the day and Loak and I always mispronounce Payakin stuff also seemed repetitive. 2 of 2. I also think it would have made more sense for Neytiri to be the narrator rather than Loak, because to me, her journey and story was a more prevalent focus to the film. Still enjoyed it anyway. You know, I remember there being some discussion in both Avatars 1 and 2 that maybe the story should have been told through the narration and through the eyes of Neytiri. I still stand by I like that it's Jake. Now, I've heard it being said that James Cameron is suggesting that moving forward, the story narration will start to be told by Neytiri, or not by Neytiri, but by Kiri. Whether that's true or not, and whether they actually follow through with that, I'm not sure. You know, though, about the repetitiveness of the subplots, I don't know that I agree. Because just because they won in Avatar Fire and Water, that doesn't mean the issues went away. And I, for one, am kind of like it when next chapters of stories don't ignore standing conflicts from the previous film that have not been resolved. And the fact that the one whale boy was outcast for his violence, that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed, and that hasn't been resolved yet. And so I was perfectly, not only was I okay with the fact that they followed that story up, they followed that point of conflict up. Not only was I okay with it, I applaud them for it, actually. I think it was definitely the right move to do that. Because a lot of movies with their sequels and follow-up chapters and stuff like that, there are standing conflicts from the previous film that were never resolved, and then they just pretend like it's gone. Want a good example of that? Here's a great example of it. Great example of that. I want to say Rocky V. Rocky V. Rocky V starts with Rocky in the shower after the fight with Drago in Rocky IV. But he's shaking, and then they realize he's got brain damage now. And he cannot fight anymore. He's got to retire. And then it ultimately, and if he fights again, he could die. And then ultimately it ends up he has his street fight with Tommy Gunn at the end, right? But then comes along Rocky Balboa, or Rocky VI, the one with Milo Ventimiglia as his son, right? Then this one comes along, where he's going to come out of retirement to fight the current reigning heavyweight champion. And never in the movie did they ever address, time out, wait a minute, what boxing athletic association is going to sanction this fight? That dude has brain damage. Who is going to give that aging athlete a license to fight against the world heavyweight champion when he has brain damage. Never touched on. No, just forget about that. Just forget about that. And like, I, for one, that drives me nuts in a lot of these movies. That drives me nuts when sequels and follow-ups just totally ignore existing non-resolved conflicts from the previous film. So I, for one, am actually kind of glad narratively that they followed up on that and they had to bring that storyline to a conclusion. So I personally like the way they did that, but whatever. That's just me. All right. Let's see. Next up, somebody's saying in the live chat, well, I mean, they let Jake Paul fight this weekend. Yeah, there you go. How embarrassing was that? All right. Ethan Holgate writes, 1 of 3. I could write a paragraph on how much I love this movie. LOL. I love the scene between Jake and Quaritch in the prison. I did too. I thought that was a really good scene. Harken back to... Oop, I lost my spot. Oh, I really lost my spot. Give me a second here. I'm all the way back to the questions from the show this morning. Let's see. Let me get caught up. Okay, here we go. Let me try this again. Ethan Holgate writes, I could write a paragraph on how much I love this movie. LOL, I love the scene between Jake and Quaritch in the prison. Kind of harkens back to a scene in movie 1. Also how badass was Ronald Before I Die, I'll Give Birth. Tough woman. Also Scorby's death. Very satisfying and a great line. Is my protest noted now? Yeah, I love that line. I'm glad that guy came back for the next movie. Who is it? Clement? Is that who has played him? I am so glad they brought him back for that. Is my protest noted now, fuckers? I thought that line was great. But also, yeah, I think that's Kate Winslet's character, right? She's like, I'm dying, but I'm going to have this baby. And then Neytiri says to her, then push. Those are two badass women, man. So I'm going to die, but I'm going to have this baby first. And Neytiri's like, then push. Great line. Just a really grrr kind of moment. I love that line. I thought those lines were absolutely fantastic. I loved it. All right, next up. Kara Black sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Kara, for supporting our channel on that level. Appreciate that very much. And Kara writes, when watching Fire and Ash Thursday night, I found myself praying during the middle to late stages of the film that they wouldn't kill off Vrang, as it would have been a way seeing how awesome of a character she is. Yeah, listen. I know I am often very much on the hate wagon of prequels. I am. That doesn't mean there aren't prequels that haven't been great. There are exceptions. 100% there are exceptions. Just like there are some exceptions to my hatred of time travel movies, and there are some notable exceptions to my hatred of multiverse movies. There are exceptions to my hatred of prequel. But generally, I don't like the idea of going backwards in your storytelling. But I'll tell you what. If Disney and Fox announced tomorrow that they were going into production on the beginning of Fire and the origin story of Varang and how her people did die in that and what transformed her into who she is now. I don't like prequels. But I got to tell you, if they announced that one, I would be in line to go watch that movie. I would totally be in line to go watch that movie. 100% I would. So yeah, sign me up for that. And you're right. She's a great character. And we'll see if they ever bring her back. If they do any more movies. All right, next up, Kara Black writes in again. Also, Una Chaplin, who portrayed Varang, is the same actress who was Robb Stark's wife, the battlefield nurse Talissa in the early seasons of Game of Thrones. I did not know that. Like, not the one that died with him in the Red Wedding. Man, I don't even remember Robb Stark's wife before he married that. I think she was a French girl. I don't even remember. Now I'm going to have to go look that up. I'm going to absolutely have to go look that up. Thank you for giving me a little bit of trivia on that, Kara. Now you've given me some homework I got to go do. All right. Next up, again, Kara coming in with a $20 super chat. And she writes, I agree, John, that Vrong has become my favorite character in the entire franchise, but very close behind her is Quaritch. I'm very fascinated with his character evolution from the first Avatar all the way to Fire and Ash. Listen, I got to tell you, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, I always have thought Quaritch was a good character. Again, love the way Slang plays him, and I love Stephen Lang's voice, running, doing the voice of him and everything. Absolutely, I've always liked the character. But I've never thought he was particularly amazing until this movie. This is the movie that, to me, when they start to introduce an arc for him, he's no longer just, and again, I acknowledge in Way of Water, they started that a little bit with his conflict about having a son and all that kind of stuff. But it's in this one that you really see him now starting to struggle, having some internal struggle. And I love that about him. And again, those lines at the end, well, maybe you shouldn't have shot my arm. And well, this is awkward. And take this one out or drop this one. Like, he had all the best lines in the movie. Quaritch had all the best lines in the movie. And I got to agree with you, Kara, that he is becoming a favorite. He's absolutely becoming a favorite of mine. All right. Once again, Kara comes in and says, Vrong is the anti-Neytiri, and I love the pairing of her and Quaritch as a dark reflection of Jake and Neytiri. You know, I didn't think of it that way, but that's a really good observation. Their chemistry is off the charts, and that tent scene between the two completely wowed me. I agree, but here's the thing. The body language of the two after the tent scene was even fantastic, especially for CG characters. It's just the body language, the way they would look at each other, the way they would walk beside each other, the look on Quaritch's face as she's firing the guns for the first time, right? And the way she would look at him when he was exuding strength or power. It was, you're right, I never thought of it, but they are a dark reflection of Jake and Neytiri. They totally are, and they're glorious, and they're awesome. And yeah, I just love those two characters. I really hope this isn't the last time we see both of them on screen. I want to see more of them. Thanks a lot for that, Kara. Next up, Amin writes, never thought Quaritch would become such an interesting, complex character. Completely agree, Amin. Great writing. Do you think he's dead? My guess is Ash Queen saved him. Here's the thing. Unless, in especially movies like this, unless you see them die, they ain't dead. Yeah, we saw him falling and going, ah! But you know what? I don't believe Quaritch would have thrown himself off that cliff if he didn't have a plan. If he didn't have some kind of backup plan, right? If he didn't have a backup plan, what he does is he lets himself get taken into custody because he's Quaritch. He'll figure out a way to escape. I just don't see him just committing suicide for the hell of it. And the very fact, now, if he threw himself off and we saw his body get impaled on a volcanic spike coming up through the ground or something like that, okay, he's dead. But now he's just hanging out in the, AWA 7-Eleven parking lot with everybody else. Still, I don't believe for a second that he's dead. I don't know how we're going to see him again or when we'll see him again, but I don't believe for a second that he died in that scene. No chance. All right, next up. Real Life Entertainment writes, I like this one more than number 2. The second half saved the film for me, especially the expansion of the lore. Love Spider and Jake scene as well. This is a great example of the subjectivity of film, because I think my least favorite scene of the movie, the Abraham and Isaac gonna kill scene, I thought that was the worst scene of the film. Completely unearned, completely unbuilt up towards, suddenly out of nowhere. That scene drove me crazy. I liked other scenes with Spider and Jake, but I really didn't like that. But for you watched it and it gave you a totally different experience, and one that you enjoyed. And that's all that mattered. That's why I love film, man. That's why I love movies. Because even if there's something in a movie that I dislike, because it's art, it's going to hit somebody else in a different way, and somebody else can get some real enjoyment and joy out of it. So I'm glad you did. I did not. I didn't like the scene at all, but I'm glad that you did. All right. Next up, Timothy Rhodes writes, hi there, John. I found Quaritch to be one of the most compelling characters, me too. Do you think they could have focused on him more? No. I don't, and I'm glad they didn't. You know what? I think the use of Quaritch is a great example of the perfect amount of time. They had him on screen enough time to establish really more of his character, to establish the inner conflict, to show him going through the progressions of the conflict and being tugged back and forth between, do I want to be this? Do I want to look through the new eyes? No, I am, Colonel Quaritch. I'm a this. I know whose team I'm on. And it goes back, and they did it just enough. I thought they did it just enough. Now, that could set him up to be featured more later on, but I thought the way they used Quaritch and the amount they used Quaritch in this film was absolutely perfection. I don't think they used him too much. I don't think they used him too little. I think that was the perfect amount for him, and it left me wanting more. And so we'll see what plans James Cameron has for him as they move forward, if they move forward. All right. Amin writes, I think I enjoyed this more than Way of Water. I didn't, but I'm hearing that from some people. I do think the story was stronger here, but I'm excited to watch Water and Ash, LOL, back to back, or maybe as like a mini 6-episode series or something. You know what? I think you're onto something there. I think I'm going to do that. I think once Fire and Ash gets released on home video in a few months, I think I'm going to sit down and do a double feature. Cause kind of like how some people are saying watching Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair, like back to back is the way it was meant to be watched. I kind of feel like I'm going to have that same feeling watching Way of Water and Fire and Ash back to back. Because Fire and Ash really is Way of Water Part 2. It really is. I mean, technically they're Avatar 2 and 3, but Way of Water and Fire and Ash are actually Avatar: The Way of Water Part 1 and Avatar: The Way of Water Part 2. And I think watching it that way back to back is going to be a good experience. I'm going to look forward to doing that. All right. Parzival writes, the scene when Loak almost takes his life and the spider scene hit me too hard. Forgive me, guys. Who's Loak again? I'm forgetting who Loak is. Is that the kid? Yes, that's Jake's son. I couldn't remember Jake's son's name. Loak, that's his son. The only remaining living one. Yes. At first, when they cut to the scene where he's getting ready to shoot himself, my first thought was, really, this is out of nowhere. But then I thought about it for a minute. Especially, one of the things I love about Jake's character is he is not perfect. Jake makes mistakes. Totally right-hearted, totally good motivation, but he makes mistakes. And he does things wrong sometimes. And certainly how he interacts with his son sometimes is the wrong way. And after that first initial thought of mine when he was getting ready to kill himself, I thought, well, this is kind of out of nowhere. I thought about it for a minute. It's like, you know what? This kid's been on the run. He lost his brother. He's seeing his mom's going a bit crazy. His dad thinks he's useless. Now he formed this incredible bond with Whale Brother, and now Whale Brother's gone. And you know what? For a kid that age, that would be a lot to deal with. And that would be a lot to handle. And I went from being kind of dismissive of the scene to suddenly thinking the scene was actually really heavy and really good. And so it won me over. It did. So I agree with you. I see you, Parzival. I see you. All right. Next up, Thought Gnu writes, first movie that made me think to myself, wow, this movie is long, but still had a good time. You know, here's the funny thing. I never found myself like I have in some other 3-hour-plus movies, sitting there looking at my watch, saying, this is really long. I was just hit with the feeling that this movie was longer than it needed to be. I didn't feel the full 3 hours. Again, to me, it was just, it's not that it was 3 hours, because if 3 hours was the right runtime for this movie, it would be no problem. It was that there was so much unnecessary stuff in it that it could have been 20 minutes shorter. But I never really felt the 3 hour length. You know what I mean? I know that sounds contradictory, but it's actually true. Like I just felt like scenes shouldn't have been there. It felt longer than it needed to be, and yet I didn't feel the full 3 hours. I know it's kind of weird to say, but that was my experience with it. All right. Joe Adonis writes, that unavailing attempt by the sun, unaliving, sorry. That unaliving attempt by the sun did not have that much of an impact on me. They could have done it better to portray what's supposed to be an emotional scene. Maybe I'm just shrugging it in this season. You know what? I was of the same mindset as you. Again, it was happening, and I'm like, this feels contrived. This feels very contrived. When he first puts the gun to his own chin and all that kind of stuff, I thought this feels contrived and whatever. But again, the more I thought about it, the scene won me over, and I started to feel it a little bit more. But again, I can't fault you for thinking that way, because that was my initial thoughts too. And maybe that is a testimony that maybe Cameron should have set up the scene a little bit more to have that impact. Maybe an argument can be made that I shouldn't have had to have thought about it for a few minutes for the scene to have an impact on me. Maybe an argument can be made about that, but you know, it's after I thought about it, Joe Adonis, it kind of worked for me, but I totally get where you're coming from on that. All right. Next up, John Juan writes, Avatar Fire and Ash is so epic. I loved it. Ranking it 1, 3, and 2. I love the running time. The only thing I didn't like was the bad guys survived from part 2 and another whale killing. Still, I loved it. Again, to me, though, if you look at it as the continuation of Way of Water, that is a standing conflict that has to be addressed. And if you're going to have the whales change their entire philosophy of life, an insane tragedy has to be about to happen to them to force them to change their entire ideology about living and life and the preciousness of all life. So that part worked for me. Unlike you though, I still don't put 3 ahead of 2. I still think I would put 2 as my number 1. I would put 2 as the best movie to me. I loved 2. I think it's my favorite one. And I definitely think 3 is the weakest of the 3. But again, I say that having really enjoyed the film. I really enjoyed it. I just thought the other 2 were a little bit better. All right. Next up, Amin writes, I loved every single thing about the Ash tribe. Me too. Give me a whole film or book or something about them and their culture so well developed. You know, it was you know what I want to hear anybody talking about? The kamikaze scene. When they're in that first aerial battle against the flying merchants, she just looks at one of her guys and gives him the nod, and he douses himself in like some kind of gasoline, and then she shoots a fire arrow at him to burst him into flames and have him kamikaze into the flying merchant ship. I'm looking at that, I'm like, that is badass. You know what it reminds me of? I know some of you have never seen Conan, the original Conan the Barbarian. But that scene where she looks at his guy and the guy just knew, oh yeah, douse myself in fire and she's going to shoot me with this fire. I'm going to go down, right? It reminded me of that scene in the original Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Earl Jones, Conan the Barbarian. When James Earl Jones is talking to Conan, says, do you want to see what power is? And he looks up on the high part of the cliff overlooking the structure. And there's this maiden there dressed in white. And he looks up and he says, for those of you who remember the movie, James Earl Jones looks up and he goes, come to me, my child. And all the girls say, oh, cool. He's asking me to throw myself off the cliff. Great. And she just steps off and falls down and kills herself. Falling off it. He says, that's power, right? So it kind of reminded me a little bit about that. Or also, somebody just said in the live chat too, what were the boys in Mad Max Fury Road that painted themselves in white? What were they called again? And would they get ready to commit suicide for it? And they'd spray themselves with the silver spray. I can't remember what do they call the something boys? I can't remember what they were called themselves. It reminded me a little bit. Anyway, I thought that whole thing was badass when she did that. All right. Next up, Kara Black writes in again, says, Scoresby, the Tulkun hunter, his death was so satisfying, unlike Varang or Quaritch, that is a villain/antagonist who needed to go away. Like Venom said after killing Cletus, F that guy. F that guy. You know what though? I kind of wanted a more gruesome death for that dude. Like that guy, the best villains are the ones that you can have some empathy for. Because while they're vile and while they're evil and while they're the bad guy, you feel sorry for them for how they got to that point. You understand some of their motivations. Great examples of that is Thanos and others, right? That it's great. Like Varong, I said, I wonder what was she like before the tragedy happened? What turned her into this, right? Kara's like, but every once in a while, it's good just to have a straight up piece of shit villain who's just a piece of shit. And that guy was a piece of shit. And there was nothing redeeming about him. And every once in a while, you just need something like that peppered in there. And my only problem with his death, I would have liked to see seen something a little more gruesome. I really wanted to see him suffer a horror, getting dragged down to the bottom of the ocean, unable to breathe by a giant whale creature. That could qualify, but I wanted something more graphic to happen to him. That's just it. Just me. Maybe I'm being a little too gruesome about that. By the way, they're called war boys, as people in the live chat are telling me. And of course, their big thing that they would say when they were about to do something that would end their own lives. Witness me. I love that. That was so cool in that movie. Anyway, Isaac Martinez says, Avatar 3 is very good and it was better in IMAX 3D. Yeah, well, I'm glad you thought so. I am not, as you know, Isaac, I am not a 3D guy. I find 3D to be a complete waste of time and a total useless gimmick. But that doesn't mean everybody else has to feel that way. I respect if other people enjoy it. And if you enjoyed it in 3D, awesome. I am just incurably not a 3D guy, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, Isaac. All right. The Gray Lestar writes, what do you say to people who say it's the same story? You can hold literally every franchise to that same criticism, Empire versus Rebels, superheroes, etc. Yeah, no, listen, that's one of the first things I said when I came out of the movie was all this criticism I heard from first reactions, like, yeah, it's a little too similar to Way of Water. I'm like, what? I didn't find it any more similar than any other theme. Oh, Return of the Jedi, man. Just rebels fighting the Empire again. More guys with the laser swords. More spaceship fights. Darth Vader bad. Like, it's the continuation. It's the next chapter of the story. What did you expect? Should they now be on another planet with totally different characters? Listen, again, I'm not trying to, degrade other people's criticism. I don't mean to do that. I'm just saying for me, myself, walking out of that movie, having heard all these people beforehand saying that it's just too similar to the last one, I'm like, it's just the next chapter of the story. It's what happens next with Quaritch and Jake and Neytiri and the battle of the Sky People versus the Na'vi. And it's the next chapter. Of course, we're going to have continuing thematic ideas, but I didn't feel there was any more of that than going from Two Towers into Return of the King. They're still after that ring again, right? I didn't feel like I didn't feel any more than that was going from, again, like Two Towers into Return of the King, or Empire Strikes Back into Jedi, or or Harry Potter 3 going into Harry Potter 4. Pff, they're going back to the school again. Well, yeah, of course, it's the story. It's the next chapter of the story. So I myself had no problem with that whatsoever. And I don't really get that criticism. Again, I'm not devaluing or trying to illegitimize people having that as an issue. I'm just saying, for me personally, I didn't see that at all. And again, I'm somebody who, I think this is the least good of the three, but I didn't see that part as a problem. I didn't see that part as a part of the problem at all, but that's just me. All right. Next up, we got Parzival again, who writes, Payakin, yes, matriarch. Yeah, I like that. I like those whales. I gotta say, at first in Way of Water, they kind of bothered me, but I ended up really kind of liking the whales. Amin writes, if I was Quaritch, I'd fall for Varong as well. Dude, Varong is an alien, non-human, totally fake, fictitious character, and I kind of got a semi for her. There's a lot of sexual appeal with that character. I don't know, maybe it was her badassness or whatever, but yes, totally get. If I was Quaritch, I'd probably be looking to hit that up too. All right, let's see. Next up, we got Quantum of Zen, who writes, Onyona Chaplin, there's another O in there, won't get a Best Supporting Actress nomination for playing Varong, but she absolutely walked off with every scene she was in. I completely agree. I completely agree. You know, only Andy Serkis, and I felt this way about the second Planet of the Apes movie. I really fully believed Andy Serkis deserved a Best Supporting Actor nomination for playing Caesar in the second Planet of the Apes film. Really do. 100% I do. But there really hasn't been any other motion capture performance that I have felt deserved that same conversation until this movie. Listen, I get the argument. I do. I get the argument that, and this is going off on a side tangent here, but follow me here. I understand the argument that with a motion capture performance that other people are contributing to it, right? You have digital designers and animators that help in the performance, right? Yes, it's the person's performance, but it's being augmented by other people as well. I get that, but here's my counter argument to that. Every performance has other people affecting it. From the lighting person casting the right light and shadows on the actor to enhance what they're doing, the director giving direction to the actor about how they want them to emote and how they want their performance to go. Costume people who put the clothes on the actor that enhances the scene and enhances their presence on screen. The hair and makeup people who meticulously and painstakingly go in and do their hair and visualize their face, all that kind of stuff. So it comes across the exact way that the director's vision and envisions it, the way the director's vision is for the film and for the performance. So yes, in a virtual capture performance, there are other people augmenting that performance. But my argument would be, so are live action performances. They also have teams of other people that put in towards and contribute to what comes across to the audience on screen from that actor. So if it was me, yeah, I would say she would need to be up for a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I really do. I stand by that, and I'll have that argument with anybody. All right. She won't, of course, but I will have that argument. Okay. Next up, Amin writes, over the last 3 films, we've gotten a lot of great character development and growth. The weakest is probably the youngest Sully daughter. I agree. And listen, I'm not going to say weak as in bad, but they haven't given her anything. She's the only one of the Sully kids that is there just to be there. Now, granted, she is the youngest. She's the only one that is literally still a child. What character arc and big character development do we expect? And maybe it's unfair to expect too much, but I completely agree with you. Out of all the Sully family and all the auxiliary characters, that is the one that has had really no arc and really no development, but you know, it's a child. We kind of give that one a little bit of a pass, but I agree with you. All right. Jack Lewis writes, John, do you think we get Avatar 4 and 5? Does Big Jim return to direct? You know what? We kind of touched on this a little bit on the flagship show earlier today, on the John Campea Show earlier today. One of the things nobody's talking about when it comes to Avatar 4 and 5, everybody's talking about the other movies he wants to do, or everybody's talking about, is this one going to make enough money to justify doing another one and all that kind of stuff. The one element that I think about and that nobody else is touching on, or that I haven't heard anybody discuss, is the fact that Jimmy C, good Canadian kid James Cameron, is 71 years old. Now, he's still fully functional. He's still, fully operating at the height of his powers, all that kind of stuff. But I can't help but wonder if at 71, and we've seen how long it can take him to make one of these Avatar films, and it's got to be completely exhausting. If he has, as a creative guy, if he has other dreams and other projects he wants to do, at 71, I have to imagine he's aware of the fact that he's only got a certain number of years to direct left, right? And does he want to spend those remaining directorial years that he has continuing to do Avatar, a series in which he's already made 3 films? Or maybe he's got other ambitions and other projects that he'd like to do. So I don't know. Like, somebody else is very well pointing out, Clint Eastwood is 90. Yes, he is. Point to me to 19 other directors right now who are in their 90s. 19 others. I mean, Ridley Scott's got to be getting close. I don't know how old Ridley Scott is right now, but he's still going. The point is, Eastwood is very much an exception. He's very much an exception. So I mean, I don't know. At 71, does he want to invest another 4 years into doing Avatar 4? Now, there are, of course, those reports out that they've already actually shot some of Avatar 4 already. And maybe that happens. Maybe we don't get another Avatar movie at all. Maybe we do get another Avatar movie, but James Cameron just produces this time and he hands the director reins off to somebody else while he starts to put together another project of some other type. I don't know. But I'm not, let's just say this. I'm not 100% sure. I think the odds are that we get an Avatar 4, and the odds are that James Cameron directs it. But I'm not 100% sure that we're going to get an Avatar 4. And if we do, I'm not 100% sure that James Cameron directs it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all kind of goes. But again, I'll say the odds are that we do. All right. Kashav writes, I'm going to be honest, I think this movie was meh. I get it. Yeah, like I said a little bit earlier, I quite enjoyed it, but I have a number of drawbacks with the film, and I could totally see how the drawbacks that I experienced that would have made an even bigger impact on somebody else. You may have seen the same weaknesses that I saw, but only it affected your enjoyment even more than mine. And if that's the case, I get it. See, I really quite like the film. But again, I don't think you're crazy if you didn't. And so if it hit you in that way, I totally get it. I really do. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on it, man. All right, next up. And our final question of the day, because we turned off Super Chats quite a while ago. William writes, hey, Campea, I've enjoyed every film I've ever seen. It's just about deciding whether you laugh at a movie or laugh with a movie. So I started wonder if there is a movie I couldn't enjoy. Any idea? Well, I mean, that just means you're the type of person that that it's something in it can hit you in a good way. And unfortunately, not all of us are like that. I definitely have movies that I really didn't like watching and that I very anxiously and excitedly look forward to never watching them again. I would say try Craven on for a size. Try Craven. Yeah, Craven might do it for you. Or watch the new Amazon Ice Cube movie, War of the Worlds. That might change your perception of the whole thing too. I'm not saying it will, but it just might. Those would be some of the ones that I would go for. All right. Guys, that wraps up all the questions that we took in, because again, I turned off the Super Chats a while ago, but I got a couple of minutes left. So here's what I'm going to do. For all you guys who are still here in the live chat, if you look in the live chat right now, if you have a question or a thought, type the word, see what I just typed in there? In all capital letters, question, colon, and then say your thought, opinion, question, whatever. And I'm not going to answer all of them. I'm just going to cherry pick out a couple to address and answer. And we'll just see what you guys are asking. You don't have to send in a super chat to do it. So I'll give you, I know there's about a 20-second delay, so I'll give you guys a few seconds here. to throw in some questions. And I know for a it takes the live chat a minute to catch up as well. All right, here we go. All right. Adredy writes, do you think the fight will be taken to Earth? I do. I think that's the only natural thing. You can only do this on Pandora for so long. I think at some point it's going to go to Earth. If they do 4 and 5. So my guess, now I don't know that for sure, but that would be my guess. All right. Let's see. Somebody's writing, Rebecca writes, do you think Spider will become a huge character in Avatar 4? Yes. Listen, we cannot just go, oh, that's a cool thing that a human being was literally genetically transformed by the planet itself into a being that the environment of Pandora is now conducive to him existing there. That is not a small thing. That's not something you can just glaze over. That's a major development. So yes, I do think that will be a significant thing moving forward. Let's see here. Where we got? Big Square, what are your hopes for Avatar 4? Well, assuming that it happens, my hopes would be more on the Quaritch development. And look, right now I need to see a resolution. I hope by the end of 4, we see a possible ending, because right now, even with this movie, there's no conclusion in sight. The humans are just going to send more and more and bigger and badder weaponry and machines and soldiers and whatever. And it's just going to be that over and over. There has to be something that offers hope to resolve the problem. It doesn't have to be accomplished in 4, but at least give us that picture of what it is. And that's what I would kind of hope for 4, if we get a 4. All right, let's see here. David's saying, what is some of the things you think could have been cut out? I'll just use I think it's the biggest example and the most obvious one. It's the one where Loak, whatever Jake's son's name is, when he's out in the middle of the ocean and all of a sudden out of nowhere, he gets attacked by all the big squids. Completely pointless, completely unnecessary. It just wasted screen time. We could have just moved right forward. If you literally took the edit scalpel and cut to just before that scene started and then cut when it ended, and he's out there on the ocean, and then his sisters find him, and then they find the whale, it would have just been smoother, better. And there were several examples of that throughout the movie as well. Let's see. Benjamin is asking, who should direct 4 and 5 if not James Cameron? Oh, anybody. Just get a good director. Any good director. Just name an X director in X movie. As long as you get a director who knows how to tell good story, that's all you need. That's all you need. So I think there'd be any one of 40 directors, which would be perfectly good to do it as well. Let's see. What did you think of the filmmaking fandom writes? What did you think about the scene where Jake blames Loak for his brother's death, but then instantly regrets it? I liked it. I liked it a lot. Again, one of the things that I really appreciate about Avatar and Jake is particularly that they never make him out to be remotely perfect. Listen, he's got a great moral North Star, but always knowing how to follow that moral North Star is tricky. And he's still emotional. He makes mistakes. He says the wrong thing. Sometimes he does the wrong thing. He always wants to do the right thing. But that's one of the things I like about it. And I think, listen, I can only imagine what a parent who lost a child feels. I can imagine, though, and I can only imagine, there is so much pain and so much rage that I have no doubt it would rightly or wrongly spill over to people around you. Listen, it's not a secret. A lot of couples break up that lose a child. And while I am no expert on the matter, I don't think it's a coincidence that you know, there's a good percentage of couples who lose a child end up breaking up because you have so much pain that, right or wrong, fair or unfair, intentionally or not, I think a lot of that pain you allow to spill over to the people close to you. And that scene rung very, it was the wrong thing for him to do, and yet the scene rung very true for me. It rung very true. And I thought it was a gutsy scene, and I liked the scene, and I thought it was quite good. Let's see here. Pape writes, do you think the Spider actor had a good performance? I think it was pretty bad. I do think it was quite good. I think it was exactly what James Cameron wanted. I think he delivered exactly what James Cameron was directing him to give him. He has a very distinct personality, a lot of individualistic character. I like that. He wasn't just a normal, bland, you know, almost unidimensional kind of character. He had a very distinct personality. And remember his age too, almost a little bit of an annoying personality. I thought the performance was quite good. I'm not going to lie. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. All right. Last one I'm going to take. LT Productions writes, does James Cameron make a non-Avatar movie before retirement? 100% he does. I have very little doubt. Now, the only question I have is, will he put off or stop doing Avatar films in order to do some of these other films that I'm sure he'd like to do? That part I don't know, but I feel pretty safe in saying, yeah, I think he's going to make other films besides Avatar films before he retires. And all right, guys, that will do it for this little special video tonight of our Avatar Fire and Ash open spoiler discussion. Thank you guys so much for being here and watching this little video and hanging out and chatting with us, all that kind of stuff. Big thank you to all you guys who sent in the comments and questions. One, because you give us great, interesting things to discuss. And two, you supported our channel as you did it. And everybody involved with the John Campea YouTube channel, thanks you guys so very much for your support. Listen, guys, don't forget to come on back here. We are now just 12, 13, 14, 15, about 16 hours away from our next video, our next live stream. Of course, the John Campea Show, the flagship show, tomorrow at 12 noon Los Angeles time. That's 3 p.m. New York time, or you can figure out what that means in whatever time zone you're in. I hope you guys will come back and join us again for that. We're going to be in studio here. Looking forward to it. So that will do it for me for tonight, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.